The mirror in apartment 213. Elena's screams echoed through the narrow hallway of apartment 213, but by the time the neighbors broke through the door, the sound had stopped. Inside, the room was silent, unnaturally so. The lights flickered overhead, casting pale shadows on the floor. In the center of the living room stood the antique mirror, tall and gold-framed, its glass faintly vibrating, as if something inside it had just moved. The police found no sign of a struggle, no broken glass, no footprints, no Elena, but on the floor in front of the mirror was her phone, still recording. The last frame captured showed her face frozen in terror, eyes fixed on her own reflection, as a pale hand pressed up from the other side of the glass. Then static. That was 3 days ago. Now, let's go back to how it began. When Elena first moved into apartment 213, she was relieved to finally have her own place. It was small, outdated, and smelled faintly of old paint, but it was cheap, and after a recent breakup, she needed a fresh start. The landlord, a quiet older man named Mr. Palmer, gave her a single warning as she signed the lease. Don't move the mirror. It came with the apartment. It stays with the apartment. At the time, she thought he was joking. The mirror stood against the wall in the hallway. Taller than her, the glass tinted slightly gray, like fog trapped inside. It had strange carvings along the frame. Faces of angels, or maybe demons, she couldn't tell. The first few nights were fine. Elena spent her time unpacking boxes, listening to music, and FaceTiming her sister Maya to show off her new home. But every time she walked past the hallway, she felt something off, like the reflection lagged behind, a fraction of a second slower than her movements. She laughed it off at first, joking that the place was a little haunted, but the laughter faded quickly. One night, as she filmed a short video tour to send to Maya, something strange happened. She panned the camera across the living room, then past a mirror. Later, while rewatching the clip, she froze. Behind her reflection, just over her shoulder, stood another figure, faint and motionless. It was tall, thin, and completely colorless, like a person made of fog. The figure vanished when she turned around the video, as if it had ducked out of sight. Elena convinced herself it was a trick of light, maybe her shadow, maybe the angle. But that night, she couldn't sleep. At 3:12 a.m., her lamp flickered on by itself. From the hallway came a faint whisper, barely audible but perfectly clear. Elena. She grabbed her phone and pointed it toward the mirror. The hallway looked empty, but her reflection wasn't alone. Standing right beside her reflection was a pale hand, pressed against the glass, fingers long and thin, sliding downward as if tracing her outline. She dropped her phone and ran out of the room. The next morning, she found the mirror exactly as before. Perfectly clean, perfectly still. Her phone, however, showed something she couldn't explain. In the video, as she fled, her reflection didn't move, and it was smiling. The morning after the reflection incident, Elena tried to convince herself she was imagining things. Lack of sleep, stress from moving, or maybe her mind playing tricks in a new place. Still, she couldn't shake the unease that crept in whenever she passed the hallway. She decided to distract herself by inviting her sister Maya over for dinner that evening. Maybe having someone else in the apartment would make it feel normal again. When Maya arrived, she immediately noticed the mirror. "Wow, that thing's huge," she said, stepping closer to inspect the carvings. "It looks expensive. You sure it's not cursed or something?" Elena laughed nervously. "The landlord said I can't move it. Apparently, it came with the place." They spent the night chatting, eating pizza, and scrolling through social media. For a while, everything felt okay. Then, around 10 p.m., Maya walked past the hallway and froze. "Did you move?" she asked quietly. Elena frowned. "What do you mean?" "In the mirror," Maya said, pointing. "You were standing behind me a second ago, but now it's like you didn't move with me." Elena turned toward the mirror. Her reflection stared back, only it wasn't facing the same way she was. The reflection's head was turned slightly to the right, as if looking toward something just out of frame. Maya's uneasy laugh broke the tension. "Okay, that's creepy. I'm done looking at that thing." But Elena couldn't stop staring. When she blinked, she swore the reflection blinked a second later. That night, after Maya left, Elena taped a sheet over the mirror. She told herself that would be enough. But sometime around 3 a.m., she woke up to the sound of soft fabric shifting in the hallway. It sounded like someone brushing their hand against the sheet. Her heart pounded as she reached for her phone and opened the camera app. From her bed, she zoomed in on the hallway door. The sheet was moving just slightly, like something underneath it was breathing. Then, slowly, the tape peeled away on its own and the sheet slid down to the floor. The mirror was uncovered. Elena whispered, "Hello?" A faint light flickered across the glass. The reflection of her bedroom appeared, but her bed was empty. Instead, she saw herself standing in the hallway, staring back to the mirror, her eyes dark and hollow. She gasped and dropped the phone. When she looked again, the mirror showed only her real reflection, trembling and pale. The next morning, she told Mr. Palmer what happened. His expression didn't change, but his voice dropped low. "I told you not to touch it. Don't cover it. Don't move it. The mirror doesn't like being hidden." When she demanded to know why, he hesitated. "Because," he said finally, "it belonged to the woman who lived there before you. She tried to cover it too. We found her reflection in it long after she was gone." Elena felt her stomach twist. "You're joking," she said, but he only shook his head. That night, she set up her phone to record the mirror again. At 3:12 a.m., the lights flickered, and the reflection showed two Elenas, one asleep in bed, the other standing behind the mirror, smiling. The next few nights were a blur of fear and exhaustion. Elena barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she could see that same image, the other version of herself standing behind the glass, smiling like it knew something she didn't. She tried to act normal, went to work, ate breakfast, but she couldn't focus. The apartment felt alive, like it was waiting for something. The air around the mirror always seemed colder, and her reflection felt too aware. On the fourth night, she called Maya again. "I'm losing it," Elena said, voice trembling. "There's something wrong with that mirror. I keep hearing whispers." "El, just stay at my place tonight," Maya urged. "Don't stay there alone." But Elena refused to leave. Something in her told her she needed to understand what was happening, to prove to herself that she wasn't crazy. So she decided to test it. That evening, she placed a small sticky note on the bottom corner of the mirror's frame, a bright yellow square, and sat across the room, watching. Minutes passed. Nothing. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, the note began to slide upward. Her chest tightened. She pulled out her phone and started recording. The note kept moving until it disappeared completely, slipping to the glass like it had been pulled inside. Heart racing, she crept closer. The frame was cold to the touch, freezing even, but her reflection looked normal. She leaned in, whispering, "What do you want from me?" For a moment, the reflection didn't respond. Then her reflection's lips moved, but she didn't. The voice came from inside the glass, soft and hollow. "Let me out." Elena screamed and stumbled back, knocking over a lamp. The light flickered once and went out. When she looked again, the reflection had changed. Her mirror itself was pressed up against the glass, hands flat, eyes wide open. Terrified, Elena grabbed a bedsheet and threw it over the mirror again. But as she did, she saw movement underneath it. Slow, deliberate shapes pressing against the fabric like hands reaching from below. That night, she slept in the living room with every light on. The next morning, she decided she'd had enough. She went to the leasing office and demanded to speak with Mr. Palmer, but the receptionist looked confused. "Mr. Palmer?" she said. "He doesn't work here anymore. He retired over a year ago." Elena froze. "No, I spoke to him 3 days ago." The receptionist blinked. "That's impossible. He passed away last summer. Heart attack. In this very building." Elena's stomach dropped. He gave me the keys to 213. The woman hesitated, then said quietly, "Apartment 213 has been vacant since his death. You must be mistaken." Elena's hands began to shake. "No," she whispered. "I live there. I've been living there." The receptionist looked at her, pale and uncertain. "Ma'am, apartment 213 doesn't have power right now. It's sealed for maintenance." Elena turned toward the hallway, and through the office window, she could see her own building across the street. In one of the dark, empty windows of apartment 213, someone was standing behind the glass, watching her. It was her. Elena ran out of the leasing office in pure panic, heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. The street outside looked wrong. Every shadow stretched too long, the air unnaturally still. She turned toward her building. Apartment 213's window was dark again, as if nothing had been there. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Come back. We need to finish what you started." She almost dropped it. The message came with a photo. The mirror. Only this time, her reflection was missing. Elena sprinted back toward her apartment. The door to the building was locked, even though it had never been before. She banged on it until her knuckles hurt, then ran around the back entrance. It was slightly open, as if someone had been expecting her. Inside, the hallways were dark. The power was out again, but faint light flickered from beneath her door. She hesitated, every instinct screaming for her to turn back. But something about the light, pale, rhythmic, pulled her forward. When she entered apartment 213, the smell of dust and cold air hit her immediately. Her phone flashlight caught the mirror standing bare in the hallway, uncovered, gleaming faintly in the darkness. The floor around it was covered in footprints, her own, circling it over and over. Then the whisper returned. "Elena." It sounded like her, but not quite, like her voice was echoing from underwater. She raised the phone, recording again. "Who are you?" she whispered. Her reflection smiled. "I'm what's left." Before she could react, her reflection moved on its own, stepping forward, pressing both hands against the glass. Cracks spread outward in a spiderweb pattern, and the mirror began to hum, deep and low, like metal bending. Elena backed away, but her body felt heavy, as if the air itself were pulling her toward it. The reflection mimicked her every move, until it didn't. It tilted its head, then reached through the cracked surface. The glass rippled like water as its pale hand emerged, fingers stretching for her. Elena screamed and swung her phone at the hand, but it passed straight through, hitting only cold air. The hand grabbed her wrist. The skin was icy, and before she could pull free, the reflection yanked hard. She stumbled forward, hitting the surface. Only it wasn't solid anymore. It felt like falling into deep water. Everything went black. When the neighbors heard the crash and called the police, officers found the apartment locked from the inside. No sign of forced entry. Only Elena's phone, lying in front of the mirror, still recording. In the video's final seconds, the mirror is cracked but whole. The reflection shows Elena standing there, breathing slowly, eyes empty, her skin faintly gray, her movements slightly delayed. But in the real apartment, there's no one there. The police sealed the room, marking it as a hazard zone. Weeks later, maintenance tried to remove the mirror, but every time they lifted it, the reflection showed a new person standing behind them, someone who wasn't there. Apartment 213 remains locked to this day, and if you walk past it at night, neighbors say you can still see a pale figure standing in the mirror, waiting for someone to come home.